parent expect me to pay for her DUI? So, a bit on context. Before I begin, there are some things that need to be known. First, I would like to say that the entitled parent in this story is my own mother, and that everything I type is real, though I wish it wasn't. Also, to shorten the names, I am putting them as follows. EP, entitled parent, MS is, mean sister, though it will be changed later on to NS, nice sister, EC is, entitled child, OS is, older sister, and SG, me, aka shy girl. Story, so, up until I was 18, I'd never met my mother. This was because she lost me at the early age of 5 to my grandfather. We'll call him PG, pedo grandfather. We won't get into that story simply because it's illegal right now to speak of it until our court hearing. Anyways, me and my little sister, I'm older by 2 years, lived with PG for most of our lives. Mean sister though was a bit of a troublemaker, and always placed the blame on me should she get caught. I was an extremely quiet kid, and never did anything bad, but she would still try to shift the blame. When mean sister was 15, she moved out and moved in with entitled parent. I followed a year or so after. Now, the first few weeks and months, entitled parent was nice. She'd go out of her way to help me, and would always be there when I needed her. Me starting to get a check, this is when everything started. Just to point out, I have a mental disability that doesn't allow me to work, and it makes me take longer than others to learn the simplest of things. Because of this, I was able to get on disability, and monthly would receive a check. At first, the check was extremely small, and I ended up having to give most of it to entitled parent because, apparently, I was now a renter even though I never signed any type of form. I didn't know about any forms then. Then, my check increased because the people that had been over my check were no longer over it, while my grandmother, not married to PG, or even affiliated with him since entitled parent's childhood, now was. After that, I started getting $60 a week, and paying entitled parent $300 a month. After that, it just got worse. Entitled parent started to try and go after the $60 that I got each week, constantly trying to come up with reasons to why I owed her it. One time, while I was getting dressed, I lived in the basement at that time, she stormed in and started to yell and harass me. It got so bad that she tried to wrap her hands around my neck. I quickly swatted her hands away and told her that if she ever laid her hands on me again, I would call the police. Her response still angers me today. Entitled parent, what are you talking about? You made me wrap my hands around your throat. After a few more months, I moved out of the basement and moved into the upstairs room. There's only one laundry room, and it was in the basement. I was tired of not being allowed to lock the door even when I was getting dressed. A few months later, entitled parent got off a probation. That's when shit hit the fan. After that, she started to act like a young college girl, smoking pot, drinking, coming home the next day with a hangover. And that's not even the worst part. At the time, I was seeing a guy. Let's call him DG, decent guy. Entitled parent was always hounding me to get him to get the house pizza. The first few times I refused. I didn't like using people, and felt really bad about even thinking about it, and ended up not being allowed to eat until I finally caved. I thought it would be a one-time thing, but it ended up being a weekly occurrence. Me and DG got into a wreck a few months later. We were engaged by then, and I thought that that event would make entitled parent more compassionate towards me. Nope. A few weeks later, I received a check of $1,200. Entitled parent was expecting it, but I knew better than to let her anywhere near the money, and gave the check to my grandmother to put into my bank account that entitled parent wasn't able to get into. After this, I ended up calling in quits with DG and ended things. We're still friends, but I hated the fact that my own mother was making me use him like that. A year passed, with no signs of any change from entitled parent. By then, I had been taken on 2 separate pill deals, both without my knowing until afterwards. So, everything came to a head almost 2 months ago. I was tired of living with entitled parent, and barely had any clothes and was always sleeping because it meant less time with entitled parent. I finally got up the courage to tell my grandmother about the pill deals when entitled parent took me on a third one. After that, my grandmother told me to be ready by the 30th, because she was moving me out with the help of my grandfather, not PG. This grandfather is an actual decent human being. We'll call him NG, nice grandfather. For an entire month, I kept quiet, and tried to avoid entitled parent as much as possible. Luckily, I had a friend that lived about 30 minutes away, and understood my situation. If I ever needed to go anywhere, she would pick me up and take me, and I'd pay her gas money in return. Come the 30th, that morning, after entitled parent had left, I received a text from entitled parent. Entitled parent, hey, the 60.00 that you're giving me today. If I'm not here, just lay it on my bed. I didn't respond. I knew I'd already given her the 60 I owed her a few weeks prior. I paid 60 a month on my phone bill. She was trying to swindle me. A few hours later, NG picked me up and helped me pack my stuff into his truck. After we got back to my grandmother's house, it was quiet the first few hours. Later that evening, entitled parent starting calling. She was saying stuff like, I agreed to loan her $200 to help pay for her D.U.I. I didn't agree to anything. And even if I did, I couldn't loan her the money cause I can't even be over my own check. I can't even agree to it because, legally, because of my disability, I can't agree to anything. Only my grandmother can. After that, she started to, once again, message me on Messenger. Entitled parent, I'm taking you off my food stamp case. That'll drop your Medicaid. So you're gonna have to reapply. Me, where's my social security card? I had searched the whole house, and even gone through her purse the day before with her consent. I think she thought if she hid it, that I couldn't be taken off her food stamps and she'd continue to get $500 a month. My grandmother was smart enough to write my social security number down, though. Entitled parent, I don't know. I don't know even where mine and entitled child's is. I knew she was lying. After that, I decided to give it a rest since arguing with her wouldn't do any good. Come the next day, I was for once relaxing without being yelled at when she once again messaged me on Messenger. Entitled parent, are you still gonna loan me the rest of the money for the fine? If so, I need it Monday morning. Yeah, I blocked her on Messenger after that. I honestly did not want to deal with her entitled bullshit. An hour later, she texted me. Entitled parent, unblock me on Messenger. Dork. Yeah, I wasn't doing that. I know what some of you are thinking, why didn't you block her on everything? Well, because I was on her family phone plan, and she was the admin. If I did block her on my phone, she would just go in and make me unblock her. Anyways, after that she called my grandmother saying that the stuff I left behind was abandoned, trying to force my grandmother to give her what used to be $200, $300. The exact amount that I paid in rent each month. My grandmother told her that she can't do that, mainly because all my grandmother would have to do would be to show up at entitled parent's house with the police, and they would probably take entitled child away due to how bad the house looked and smelled. I'm not kidding when I say this, entitled parent was so lazy, she couldn't even house train a dog. Due to this, the dog would constantly piss and shit anywhere it could reach. It got so bad that I ended up having to buy a wax warmer to make my room smell just a bit better. Entitled parent stopped saying my belongings were abandoned after that. A few days later, she tried once again to get me to give her the money by bad-mouthing my grandmother. Entitled parent, ya know. You love and respect your effing grandmother so much. Guess who got me addicted to pills in the first place? You guessed it. Her nanny. She used to sell me pills all the time. Just so you know, that was a total lie. My grandmother is the only one who refused to ever sell entitled parent pills. She was grasping at straws to get me to move back in, and it was working the opposite to what she expected. If anything, I didn't want anything to do with her after that. A few days later, entitled parent shut my phone off. Yeah, she didn't like it when my phone was back on within 20 minutes with the new addition of her now being permanently blocked from my phone. After this, I started to screenshot all of entitled parent's messages and texts. After that, my grandmother got tired of entitled parents bullshit and took me off her food stamps. This was on the 20th, and by then it was too late to get this month's food stamps, so we'll have to wait till the 3rd of next month to get ours. Entitled parent, though, doesn't get hers till the 27th. We might have really screwed entitled parent up a bit, though. You see, since I moved out in April, that means that entitled parent wouldn't be able to file me on her taxes, and if she did, it would be a criminal offense. Not even that, nice sister has also stopped talking to entitled parent, and won't even allow entitled parent anywhere near her baby, my nephew, because of entitled parent's party-going ways. Entitled parent even went behind nice sister's back and saw nice sister's baby, which ended up being a one-time thing as nice sister actually cussed out her boyfriend, and father of her son, for even allowing entitled parent near him. Even my older sister is refusing to talk to entitled parent, and has actually told me that since entitled parent's not going to bother to show up to any of older sister's children's birthday parties, older sister isn't going to bother inviting entitled parent. Now, the latest to happen is entitled parent calling my uncle-in-law. I call him dad since he's the only older man that hasn't tried to get into my pants or something, and he's the first man I actually ever trusted, last night to ask if he had any rooms available. My uncle, we'll call him AU, awesome uncle, for short, bluntly told entitled parent no. Entitled parent continued to persist, saying she had a friend that needed a place to stay. I think it was after the 4th no that she started to say that she's known this guy since high school. That he was very trustworthy. After that, AU hung up. Now, for the revenge. Since I was on disability, I was giving entitled parent $300 a month. Not even that, she also got food stamps on me, but never used them in my best interest. And that's not the worst part, she didn't put my income down on the food stamps. After I moved out, she was continually harassed me and my grandmother, calling my grandmother names and overall, being a really shitty person. My grandmother tried to get my mother to give her a third of the food stamps, but all entitled parent did was laugh in her face and tell her no. I'm guessing you're wondering where the pro-revenge is, right? Well, we took me off my mother's food stamps and put me on my grandmother's, but that's not the best part. We put my income down. Due to that, entitled parent is now having to pay back all the food stamps she was getting illegally. Oh, but it gets worse. Since I moved out not even 6 months into the year, she can't file me on her taxes. And finally, most of my family, aka my older sister, my older brother, and my younger sister, refuse to let entitled parent have any part of their children's life. Especially when I let it slip that the reason entitled parent stopped going to any of my older sister's children's birthdays was because supposedly, she heard one of the guests commenting on entitled child's weight. He's the weight he is because he's always playing video games, and he eats whatever, whenever he wants. Due to this, my older sister has said that since she's not going to bother showing up, I'm not going to bother inviting her. Yeah. Entitled parent didn't like that and has started to go around saying that I'm not going so SG and nice sister can go. She won't admit that she wasn't invited in the first place. Now, she's thinking that my grandfather is going to go and take off her trash, but he's not. I don't blame him. Ever since I moved out, that house has turned for the worst. Bedbugs, roaches, you name it. And she thinks that we'd be stupid enough to even go around her house. Yeah. Fat chance. Edit. So, last night I was talking to my best friend when she reminded me of something I completely forgot about. This happened when I was still engaged to DG. There were times when entitled parent would barge into my room while me and DG were hanging out, and would start hounding us. Entitled parent, when are you going to give me biologically related grandchildren? Me, that'll be later on, when we've actually saved up enough to be able to afford a child. That, or we could always adopt. I felt really uncomfortable thinking about doing the deed, and DG knew this along with my history. Entitled parent, well, you better have grandchildren for me soon. After that, she would leave us alone. Another story is when I finally came out to her that I was a lesbian. I'd been hiding it for years. And after me and DG broke up, I finally got the courage to come out. She started saying stuff like, once you have sex with a man, you'll get those silly thoughts out of your head. And that's not even the worst part. She started handing out my number to random guys. I would get random texts from these guys, and at one point, I just started telling them straight out that I was a lesbian. Most of them took it pretty well. Others I ended up blocking. I'm still friends with one of them, and even he thinks it's rude for her to do so.